Welcome to Living Life in the End for the Successful and Fulfilled Woman. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes, the Liberated Lawyer. I help women to get everything they desire in life by equipping them with powerful strategies to achieve the fulfillment they desire and deserve. Who said you can't have it all? Clearly, they did not know about living life in the end. When women make powerful decisions and create great strategies, they can have everything they desire in life. Girlfriend, forget about choosing between being successful or fulfilled. You can be successful and fulfilled. It's time. It's time for you to get everything you desire and deserve. It's time for you to live your life on purpose. It's time for you to live a life that is fulfilled, meaningful, and full of joy. It's time for you to walk boldly in the power of your decisions. If you are going to be in this world, you need to be fulfilled in this life. Life is too long to be unfulfilled. Join me for another episode of Living Life in the End, where you learn how to live fulfilled, fit, and free. Hey, it's time for another installation of conversations, libations, and revelations. Real talk for real life. How can we be fulfilled if we can't be for real? Listen in for this great conversation with purpose with my girlfriend and our favorite grown woman beverage. Get your favorite libation and join us for this great conversation and the revelations that unfold. It's about to get real. Y'all, I say this every time, but I'm so excited about my guest today, Kimberlyn Davis. Hi, Kimberlyn, and welcome. Welcome to Living Life in the End. And of course, girlfriends, we are in for a treat. So before we get this conversation kicked off, let me just give you a little insight into who is joining us for this conversation today. Originally from Jacksonville, Florida, Kimberlyn lived in Charleston, South Carolina for the past 12 years. She has over 25 years of marketing experience, including many marketing roles with both Coca-Cola and Bank of America. In April 2019, she started K. Davis Marketing Group and quickly amassed a lucrative client list, including the Beach Company, a commercial and residential developer, the Mother Emanuel Memorial Foundation, a nonprofit, the Medical University of South Carolina, the South Carolina Ports Authority, the City of Charleston, and Phison, commercial and residential developer. As a principal of K. Davis Marketing Group, she has provided her clients with a variety of services, including running a nonprofit business, political communication strategist, community relations, message framework development, brand and architecture development, public relations strategy, and development and execution of media planning, including social media. She's got all your marketing needs down pat. And in addition to be a marketing maven, she is the mother of two children, ages 11 and 7. And I love this part. She has an amazing boyfriend. Hey, Kimberlyn.
Full circle.
Yes, yes, yes. So it's so good to see you. And of course, I always want to ask, girl, what you drinking?
Well, tonight, because it is close to kids' bedtime, we have decaf coffee with a whole bunch of cream.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I am living life on the edge today, and I've got me a glass of my favorite Sauvignon Blanc. I'm not training
Mm.
for a competition, so I am indulging in a glass
Oh, I
of
love it.
wine.
I love it.
Yeah, so I always like to start with the who, the what, and the why. And of course, I've read your bio, so people know who you are and that you are a marketing maven. But I want to really know who is the real Kimberlyn? So I ask that you share with our audience who you are, what you do, and why you live life in the end.
Oh goodness. Well, I am all those things that are on the bio and a lot more. I think that as I continue to know myself and grow, um, I have embraced the fact that yes, I do marketing. I love marketing. Um, I love my kids. I love my boyfriend, but I'm also a feeler.
Yes,
I'm a highly sensitive person,
yes,
and that's okay. I
yes.
think a lot of people want to kind of put that in a bad box, but I like to put it in a good box because I feel my way through life.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some really big perks to feeling your way through life and putting yourself in other people's shoes. And honestly, that has helped me with marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to develop strategies, being able to develop brand architecture because I'm able to quickly pick up on feelings, the feeling of a brand, and being able to communicate that out. When I was with Coca Cola, one of the things that I used to tell my peers when we worked together is that I just loved how the Coca-Cola Classic would just dance on my tongue. Like other
Mm-hmm.
people would call it fizz, but it would just dance on my tongue, and I would describe it as an ice cold, delicious, refreshing Coca-Cola.
Yes.
So that's how I am with marketing, but that's also how I am with life.
Mm-hmm.
And so as people come into your life, exit your life, as you get jobs, as you change career paths, as you go into different stages of your life, you have all these emotions
Yes.
as well. Those emotions change. Who I am today isn't the person who I was when I turned 40. It definitely wasn't that person who I was when I turned 30 or even 20.
Right.
So, to answer your question, I'm still finding out who I am.
Yes. And isn't that beautiful? Isn't that
It
beautiful?
is. It is, and I think if there's something, if there's some kind of advice I could give myself, my younger self, that I would love to give to my daughter, is I think that when I was young, when I looked up to my parents, I just thought that they had it all figured out.
Yeah.
No one told me, it's like we're still trying to figure it out.
Right.
That honest piece of advice is we are still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to sort through emotions. I'm still trying to get those emotions out of my head, put them on paper, or being able to communicate them out. I'm still trying to do it.
Yes.
And so, as you know, my younger self, I would definitely say, hey, this is a journey. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. Your idea about life is going to change. Your
Oh,
idea
yes.
about yourself is going to change.
Yes.
How you feel is going to change.
Yes. And that's the beauty about being in this world is that we
Mhm.
get to evolve in our human experience,
Yes,
and the beauty of just truly embracing that and allowing ourselves to transform through the ages, through the experiences, through the interactions and connections that we have. That's a beautiful thing about being a human being as we get to evolve.
absolutely.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
yes. So, of course, we know that you are in marketing and have had a success in that career over the past 25 years. But if you were to describe what you do, and you kind of alluded to this, but if you were to describe, what it is that you do on a daily basis, how would you describe that?
It's different from day to day.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, My biggest project that I have is with the city of Charleston and working on an arts festival.
Mm-hmm.
It's a music and arts festival, and it really is a blessing because I'm allowed to tap into the history that's here in Charleston, the Gullah Geechee culture. I'm able to tap into jazz music that I love so much. Um, and then I'm also able to report back on all the marketing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the yin and the yang,
Mm-hmm.
um, where I'm able to be creative, but also I'm allowed to be analytical too.
Yes, yes.
Um, so that keeps the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
The part that keeps me sane and keeps me going is stopping and smelling the roses. And I
Mm-hmm.
know it's very cliche-ish, but it is one of those things where I am very deliberate every day. I take time out for myself. I breathe in, breathe out. I try not to get too ahead of myself. Um, Working out,
Mm-hmm.
putting putting my physical health back together.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go through any type of change, whether it's emotional, change in job, change in family structure, change of whatever,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes our physical health suffers.
Mm-hmm. It could be the first thing to suffer, yes.
Right. And oftentimes when I am working on my physical health, I'm also working on my mental health too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that has certainly been a priority for me the last 10 months is really kind of getting my physical and mental health just in a place um, where I have contentment. And not that I didn't have it before, but like you said, everything evolves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really deliberate in understanding what are the things that make me happy,
Mm-hmm.
but what are those things that drive contentment
Mm-hmm.
and separating those out. Very deliberate.
Right. Right.
I am always, it sounds crazy, I'm always chasing peace.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And
Um,
that seems almost antithetical to chase
mhm,
peace.
mhm, mhm.
And but I am certain that you or I'll just ask and then I'll share my thoughts about just the phrasing of chasing peace. When you say chasing peace, what do you mean?
Very deliberate. It is a conscious effort. Is this going to hurt me? Is this going to interrupt my peace? Or is this going to keep peace in my life? And it's kind of like one of those flow
Mm-hmm.
charts you have for work. If it's going to cause interruption, um, and I don't have to do it, we go right because we want to stay on that right course
Mm-hmm.
to stay peaceful. If it is going to cause an interruption in my peace, then what am I going to do to go back to get that
Mm-hmm.
peace, right? So, what are those things that I need to put in place to ensure that if it is going to cause some interruption, then what do I need to do in order to maintain my peace? To get back to
Mm-hmm.
that balance again. Um, it has my peace has been interrupted a couple times in my life, actually several times, and
Right.
I'm not ashamed to say, it is that struggle of getting it back, reining it in.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not the only one that does it. I think a lot of people chase
Mm-hmm.
their peace, but the way they go about it, it might be a little different. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Right. 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 And when I heard you say chasing peace, the first thing that I thought about was intentionality around that and
Mhm.
action. Because a lot of times I think we may confuse peace with being passive, but
Mm,
it is very much active in that you have to be conscious of your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and peace won't necessarily just fall in your lap. You have to create an environment where it can thrive. And when your environment gets out of sync, you have to be active in ensuring that you are creating this environment where peace can live and thrive and grow and
That's right.
expand. Right, right,
You're absolutely
right.
you're absolutely right. One of the things I love to do, and this sounds so crazy, but Facebook is my life right now. And it's my
Mm-hmm.
life because if you hit the reels or the video little tab,
uh,
my feed, I don't know what my algorithm is, but my feed is absolutely hilarious.
yeah.
I get everything from Family Feud stuff
Mm-hmm.
to Snoop Dogg to imitation of Michael Jackson dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And I say all this because all this does is make me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
When I laugh, all of a sudden, whatever happened that day has stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And I am laughing.
Yes.
And being able to laugh is such a gift.
Yes.
And I almost feel like it almost level sets the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you can almost start over.
Right.
So I'll take 10 minutes and go through that feed and just laugh,
yes. Yes, and I think
laugh, laugh, and laugh.
yes, just like peace, like we have to chase peace,
Yes,
meaning, we're active in seeking it and creating an environment where it will well, it can coexist. I think we also have to look for reasons to laugh and seek laughter because it is something that is so therapeutic for us and contagious because it's hard to be around someone who's laughing and not laugh yourself.
that's right.
It is a way to almost instantly spread joy.
Absolutely. And I find that oftentimes to get into that mood where I'm chasing peace, laughing is often that first step
Mhm. Yes. Yes, because it
because
is
it breaks down that bit, whatever it was. Like, I can't remember what I was thinking about before I started laughing crazy for 10 minutes, right?
right, right. It definitely is a like a starter. I think about sourdough bread. Sourdough has a sourdough starter, and
Hmm.
laughter certainly is a starter for joy. For joy.
For
One last
joy.
thing I wanted to ask just before I get into kind of something I wanted to delve into with you is that, how do you live life in the end? And, living life in the end is the commitment to creating the life you desire and deserve through the power of your choices. Because we can have everything we desire and deserve, but we have to chase it. We have to actively seek it. So you've talked about some ways, I believe, that you are
Hmm.
living life in the end. But if you were to specifically describe how you are living life in the end, how would you describe that? What would you share?
Oh, goodness. I mean, it is like it is chasing that peace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and continuing to chase it because if I'm not at peace, then I can't be beneficial to raising my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to raise them in a way that creates them anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they have enough to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to show up for my kids, and I can't show up for them if I've got all kinds of stuff going on in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for me. The and is continuing to chase that peace so
Mm-hmm.
I can be there for my loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
I can be, you know, that loving girlfriend. I could be, a wonderful daughter to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but none of this would be possible without God.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so I think when we first met, I think I was pretty transparent with you. And I think I remember sharing with you the things that I do to kind of get me through. Um, and it truly is really basic. It is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that when I say that, when I keep repeating it,
Yeah.
I mean, God takes care of it, right?
Right.
Um, he has just he's given me so much,
Yes.
and continues to, um, and I part of my and is to talk to other women
Mm-hmm.
who might be quote unquote highly sensitive too,
Mm-hmm.
or perhaps they're going through a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
So chasing the peace for me, I have to do it because then there's other women who I am talking to that have gone through similar experiences that I can say, hey, this is what I've done, and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And we can share tidbits, or I could give them good advice.
Right.
But if I can't chase the peace and be clear up here,
Mm-hmm.
then the and just doesn't happen.
Right. Right. And that's something beautiful that is the perfect segue into the conversation I really wanted us to focus on. And that is, one of the reasons that I am so committed to this podcast, even, is I believe that women in particular learn and love and grow and are healed through our conversations.
Hmm.
And many times, we can think that we are going through something and it's just us. And it is such a relief and such a lightening of your spirit when you learn, wow, I'm not the only one facing this. Or you can see, oh, wow, she was able to get through this, or this is how she dealt with it. And, when we learn from our stories, when we learn from each other, we are able to write, if you will, and live our own stories. We're able to continue the chapters in our life through connections. And when I thought about talking about freedom, that's one of the things I wanted to kind of focus on in this particular episode, was just the power of freedom, and how important it is for women to value our freedom. And that has so many different meanings. But um, being able to live our lives freely and to free ourselves. And so I'll just start by asking you, what does freedom mean to you when you think about freedom, and particularly as you are on this evolution in your life, what does freedom mean to you?
Um, it means a lot first and foremost, because there's different types, as you said, of freedom. When I think about the word freedom, I instantly think about our ancestors
Mm-hmm.
and how hard they fought for the freedoms that you and I have now.
Mm-hmm.
The physical freedom
Mm-hmm.
that we have and that we enjoy. Um, as we as I think about even our parents' generation and the freedoms that they were trying to get for us,
Mm-hmm.
those it was still physical on the physical side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about where we've been for the last, I would say, 10, 15 years, when it's okay to start talking about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, freedom is not only physical, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
mental health freedom. Um, and the work that it takes, the ongoing, continuous work that it takes to find whatever brings you peace and contentment,
Mm-hmm.
not happiness, because oftentimes happiness is, especially for us ladies, is wrapped up in getting a pair of new shoes or a handbag. Happiness to me is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Contentment and peace. even though we are evolving and changing,
Yes.
that contentment is more long standing.
Mm-hmm.
So having that, again, it goes back to that piece, that chasing that peace, chasing that mental freedom is me finding that peace within my heart, within my brain. Um, and for those of us, and I think we talked about this earlier, who are feelers,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a feeler. I am not a robot. There's a lot of people that just go through the motions in life.
Right.
And it's a blessing to actually be able to see those people.
Mm-hmm.
They're confusing,
Yeah.
um, but they have taught me a whole lot about myself.
Mm-hmm.
They don't operate the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so oftentimes I feel like some of that mental freedom is unpacking somebody else's stuff that they have put in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And getting it out.
Yes.
Sometimes it's analyzing it. How does it make you feel, right? What did this do to you? Did it
Mm-hmm.
do any physical harm to you? Did it do any mental harm? And does that person need to be in your life? So
Right.
kind of going through that um, is a almost daily process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also I read a lot,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's part of the mental freedom is reading. And to your point earlier, us women, we find community a lot
Mm-hmm.
by hearing other stories. So being able to relate to, I'll give you an example, Sheila Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've read her latest book, but I was like, oh my gosh, that happened to her,
Right.
and she is still doing this.
Yeah.
There's compassion. There's the, oh my gosh. There's relatability.
Mm-hmm.
There's this, there's inspiration. She's aspirational. There's inspiration. There's just so much that you get from sisterhood.
Right.
Um, I do believe that women happen to be more feelers
Mm-hmm.
than robots. Um, and I'm not saying we cry all the time because that's certainly not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what I am saying is that we do, and we're not super emotional or anything like that. I'm just saying that we express ourselves. We say, this makes me sad. This makes
Right.
me feel this kind of way. And that's what I mean by feelers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, being able to relate to Sheila Johnson's story, being able to read books on emotions
Mm-hmm.
and being able to understand the psychology behind it,
Mm-hmm.
but then also kind of flipping it over and saying to myself, I'm not going to change who I am because of somebody else.
Right. Right. And I think, that is something that is very important to be free from, if you will, and that is
Hmm.
this feeling that you have to meet someone else's expectations, or that because someone else feels a certain way that overrides how you feel. And it is important to free yourself from this notion that, one, that you aren't allowed to express yourself and express your desires and express, what it is you need, and when we are not open to embracing that freedom, we will often kind of, as I like to describe it or have heard it described, we kind of lock ourselves in these pretty prisons. And on the outside, things may seem well. Physically, we may look like
Hmm.
the most fabulous, beautiful woman in the world, but inside, we have trapped ourselves, trapped our feelings in, and um, are imprisoned by these emotions that we've not allowed to be expressed.
So we are still enslaved.
Right, right. Because a lot of times we'll think about a, attaining certain accomplishments as the indicia of freedom. I
Mm.
have the beautiful home, I have the quote perfect marriage, the perfect relationship, the perfect family, I have this perfect whatever, perfect job, perfect career. And we think that this outward display of perfection, and I put that in quotes, is what is the key to fulfillment and the key to freedom. But if that outward display is only holding inside the real feelings that you have or the real desires that you have, then even though on the outside these things are beautiful, they're greatness, what most people would desire to have, it is a prison nonetheless.
It truly is. And been there, done that.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yes.
I When we were talking earlier about happiness
Mhm.
versus contentment, you can't throw in perfection there too,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I often think about the women that are living in these beautiful houses, and they've got the pools, and they've got everything just looks perfect, but I'm also like, how miserable are you?
Mhm.
And that's their own personal they have their own personal answer,
Mhm.
but it's real.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is real. And perhaps that woman doesn't want, maybe it is fine for her,
Mhm.
right? Maybe she's not chasing what I'm chasing,
Mhm.
and that is absolutely fine. um but you know those pretty prisons, um they're special.
Mhm. Yes.
They're special because what I see is oftentimes women blaming themselves for someone's behavior that you can't control.
Mhm.
I see women just internalizing things that shouldn't be internalized,
Mhm.
and see women, what did I do?
Yeah.
What coulda, shoulda, woulda? And, each woman has their own reason for staying,
Mhm.
whether it's financial, social status, shame from family. They're afraid of repercussions, and that is real.
Mhm. Oh yes.
Um, you know, Domestic, verbal abuse, physical abuse, whatever, those are real.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say that it's easy to stay.
Mhm.
Although it may be uncomfortable at times, and um, it's perhaps it's easier to stay and not rock the boat.
Mhm.
Um, but the hard work comes in when you do leave,
Yes. Oh yes.
and you sit down and you start to unpack everything that you went through,
Mhm.
and you unpack all the emotions. Um, and you got to put those emotions somewhere.
Somewhere, right.
So, what drawer do you put them? How do you compartmentalize it?
Yeah.
And it's not a quick fix. And I think that's why I find that the work is harder when you leave. Not from a financial perspective, because that's, yes,
Mhm.
but you're unpacking all your emotions, but you're still going through life.
Mhm.
And
Right.
sometimes when it comes to unpacking your emotions, you really do need to focus in on this made me feel this kind of way.
Mhm.
And, you know, this is X, Y, and Z, this is Y. But then you get interrupted by the kids and you're just like, oh gosh, I got to,
Right.
focus
'Cause
on the kids. And then you got to go back to those emotions.
right, 'cause life doesn't necessarily stop just so that you can process your
That's
emotions
right.
or anything. It just keeps on moving, and you have to figure out how to process and keep
And
moving.
live
Mhm.
and keep living.
Right. Right.
Um, and I think that's where there's a ton of self-help books that are out there, to talk to women about pretty prisons, or you know how to cure yourself from this, or how to deal with someone who was your spouse who was a narcissist, or here are the 25 different types of
Yes.
narcissism. I mean, your head will explode.
Yes.
And they're good stuff. It's good stuff to read, to learn about, because you can start relating and putting things into buckets.
Mhm.
But there's very few books that are out there that will tell you that it's not you,
Mhm.
it's them.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. And that person that robot
Mhm.
should not steal your joy. And here's why:
Right.
they should not dim your light.
Right. Right. 'Cause I
Um, Go
yeah, I
ahead.
was gonna say I think you make a very important point about how critical it is to understand what is external and what is internal in terms of your path to freedom, or your breaking free from situations, people, relationships, whatever, that are holding you back, holding you down. I think there is a natural tendency to, and I've talked to women about this particular point of, high achieving women in particular will take it up on themselves to think that, well, it must be something that I didn't do, or something's wrong with me. And it's, because we're so used to achieving, we're so used to putting our minds to something and it works out, because that's
We're a
how
fixer.
we have, that's how we've achieved success
That's
in
right.
our
That's
careers.
right.
And
That's
it's
right.
hard to bifurcate success in a career and what elements went into being able to create that, and success in a relationship, because even though obviously there are some parallels, but the biggest difference is, in a relationship, you're dealing with another person, another set of dynamics, another set of emotions that certainly you can respond to, you can react to, you can attempt to influence, but ultimately you have no control over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, when you are in these pretty prisons, being able to relearn
Mhm.
how to, and I mean this very lovingly, put yourself first
Mhm.
and start being responsible for your contentment
Mhm.
and peace and joy. It
Right.
is my responsibility for Kimberlyn Davis to be content. It's
Mhm.
nobody else. When you start doing that, for me at least, things got so much better.
Right.
I was never afraid of divorce. Never.
Mhm.
I have never thought it was a nasty word.
Mhm.
As a woman, we are so judgmental.
Mhm. We definitely can
But
be, yes.
yeah, yes. I mean, for most of my friends are divorced.
Mhm.
They've gone through it, and for those that haven't, God bless them because they're missing out
Mhm.
on life. They're missing out on life because, goodness, the strength that it takes for you to go through a divorce. I'm not talking financial. I'm just talking about the emotional fortitude
Mhm.
and how you forge that new relationship with yourself
Mhm.
and how you start protecting yourself.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, because one of the things that that type of disruption causes, or really, I'm not going to say cause, it creates. It really creates an opportunity.
it
'Cause-
does.
yeah, it creates an opportunity to really know who you are and to decide who you desire to be and to really create the next and best highest version of you. And whether or not that leads to another relationship, and because that's not necessarily the point, um, you know, but you get to create an even better version of yourself that can learn from the experience of that
Absolutely.
relationship, can learn from the
Absolutely.
experience of going through that, and can come out on the other side, even better than you were before. And I think, it's because you said this earlier, it's easy to stay in whatever that situation is, whether it's a job that's toxic, whether it's toxic
That's right.
family,
Yep.
toxic friends, toxic
Yep.
relationship, whatever it is, it's very easy to stay. It's very easy to stay and be miserable. But it is very hard to leave because, one, you've got to change, you've got to embrace
Yep.
disruption,
Right.
and you're responsible for yourself because then it's you. It's you making a decision, and you've got to stand firm in that decision and continue to make decisions that allow you to truly be free and to truly create a life that is fulfilled for you. And you mentioned, the importance of, putting yourself first. And I think that is something that we can be, you truly have to have a free state of mind to be able to put yourself first, because we're so conditioned to put others first, or in, depending on certain situations, we can be judged and be considered selfish when we are truly just being self-protective. And we have to really embrace the freedom of thought, freedom of behavior, freedom of action, and freedom of choice to make a decision that I no longer desire to be in this pretty prison, whatever that is. And I have decided that I want to be liberated. And, for a woman who's listening and thinking about, wow, I'm in a pretty prison, whatever that is, relationship, job, mindset, whatever it is. I look great on the outside, everything's beautiful, but I am miserable. This is not what I signed up for. What do you think? What would you say to that woman, and advising her on how to commit to truly living a liberated life?
So I thought a little bit about this question. And I'm going to take it back probably about 25 years. An amazing vocalist, her name is Tamia,
Hmm.
who married to Grant Hill. She had a song out called Stranger in My
Oh
House.
my gosh, girl.
And that every time I hear that song, it sends chills up and down my
Hmm.
spine, my biceps, all that kind of stuff, because it's not about a man.
Hmm.
It's about her changing.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And to be liberated is to understand that you change.
Hmm.
And what liberated you 10 years ago isn't going to might not liberate you now.
Right.
But look, that relationship that you had 15 years ago might not still work for you now because you have changed, you have evolved. And one thing I know is that if you have to work at relationships,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's with your significant other, whether it's with your best friend, um, whatever it is. Can you still hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Whatever it is, you have to work at relationships. And if you're committed to having a relationship with that person, you must know that things are going to change. Your conversation is going to change. And so part of living that liberated life is realizing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as you realize that, walking through your stages of life, you continually guard your peace,
Mm-hmm.
continually guard your contentment.
Mm-hmm.
You bring out that flow chart again because you do throughout this journey that we call life,
Mm-hmm.
dearly beloved, we are
Yeah, dearly
gathered here today
beloved, we're gathered here today to get through this
to
thing
get
called life.
through, yes, this thing called life. Okay. And there's just so many different stages of, so how are we going to get through this?
Mm-hmm.
How are
Mm-hmm.
we going to get through this?
Yes.
And we have these disruptors
Mm-hmm.
come,
Mm-hmm.
whether we want them, whether we initiate them or we don't initiate them.
Mm-hmm.
We've still got to come out the other side
Yes.
of that life.
Yes.
And for me, it's kind of going back after I've had a disruption, going back to that flow chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kim, all right, we got to guard peace. We got to guard, our contentment. And it's being very deliberate. Is this going to make me happy, or is this going to bring me contentment? Is this going to bring me joy? Is this going to bring me peace?
Yes.
If yes, we go right. If not, we figure it out.
Right.
And again, we talk about happiness, and I said, happiness to me could be like, oh, I want these pair of shoes, or oh, I want this house, or oh, I want this, handbag or whatever, or this car. But then I also
Mm-hmm.
think,
Mm-hmm.
no, this sounds crazy. Well, if I can't pay cash for this, is having a note on this going to bring me contentment?
Right. Right.
Because if it's not, I don't want it.
Right. Right.
And I mean,
Right.
it sounds really silly, but that's kind of the stage I am in my life, where it truly is guarding my peace and guarding my contentment.
Yes. Because, it's so important to recognize that because, you know, the change or the ability to change or the fact that you do change is the freedom. That
Yeah,
that is the freedom.
right.
Because imagine, good gracious, I can't even imagine. Imagine if at the age you are now, you were still exactly the same mindset, the same horizon as you were at age 20. you
Oh my
know,
God.
because I'm like, good gracious, if I thought the same way I did now uh, at age 50 as I did, or 52, as I did at age 20, oh my gosh. And I think what we have to embrace is that change is not the enemy, and I think many times, we resist change because we think that change is the enemy. It's going to take something away, it's going to create a difference in how we live. But change really is the key. I mean, that's the freedom, because we are truly given a gift to evolve. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that what we loved 20 years ago, we can't stand now. That's not a bad thing.
It's not
And
a bad thing at all.
huh?
It's not a bad thing at
Right.
all.
It's just you've changed, you've evolved. And you mentioned just earlier about sometimes the judgment around divorce. And I always think about divorce and relationships, any relationship. People change, and certainly in any relationship, whether that's a friendship, a familial relationship, a marriage, a love relationship, certainly there is a desire that as you evolve, because you will, that you evolve in parallel tracks and that you evolve together. And I believe some of that is through intentionality,
Yep.
and some of it is just left to life. It's, you know, you can't necessarily force someone to evolve. And some people evolve, or people evolve at different rates, at different
Absolutely.
in different ways, and to different extents. And I just know, like, for me, it was so important to come to peace with the end of my marriage and not to view it as a failure.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I distinctly remember a conversation I had with my dad, and he's like, "Well, you just got to accept that your marriage failed, or that something that your marriage was a failure, or something." He referred to, because actually it was in the context he was talking about. Bless our little hearts, how many people in the family, were divorced. My parents are divorced. Uh, my aunts are divorced. Just we divorced, whatever. But he was talking about it in the context of of divorce as being a failure. And I just, stopped him and I said, "No, I don't believe my marriage failed. I just believe it was a season that evolved, and its season was up."
Mhm.
It, and that is something that's really important for me to embrace, just to have peace with the whole situation. Because if I were to just continuously beat myself up about, oh, I should have done this, oh, I should have done that, or continuously berate him, he should have done this, he should have done that, then I won't have peace in the change, because the change has happened, it's gone, it's over with. And that is a philosophy that I have been committed to give myself peace of mind, and to just realize that the fact that we changed in two different ways wasn't a bad thing. We just changed in two different ways, but it had its purpose. It had its good elements, and now it's different. It's something else.
Yep.
That
Yep.
relationship has transformed, and so I just think it's so important for us to view change as a gift. Because if we're lucky, not if we're lucky, if we're blessed, we get to evolve in
Amen.
this life, you know,
Amen.
and we get to become better and higher versions of ourselves. And in our relationships with our friends, our spouses, our love interests, our family, certainly the desire and the hope is that we evolve on similar paths, but we also have to free ourselves and free others from, the belief that all of our paths have to be the same,
Right. That's right.
you know.
That's right. And it's so bizarre because I feel like when it comes to matters of, you know, the mind and us changing, right? It's often met with resistance.
Mhm.
Yet, I'm going to throw out an analogy for you because I know you like to lift weights
Mhm.
and I do too. We know that if we need to grow our hamstrings, our glutes, whatever muscle it is,
Mhm.
we can't keep doing the same thing over and over.
Mm-mm. Because our bodies will get used to it, and just, I'm not doing anything else.
Exactly right. But in order for our glutes to grow, you got to shock them. You got
Yep.
to do something else.
Yep. Yes.
And we're never resistant to that kind of change.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the change of who we are and us evolving, I mean, we're so blessed to be able to have these disturbances that
Yes.
allow us to grow,
Yes. Yes.
that allow us, because I often think with every disruption, with every disturbance, we grow closer to God.
Disruptive elevation.
Yeah.
That's why I, have embraced that term, because disruption, when we are intentional about it and when we free ourselves from the fears and the resistance, disruption truly has the ability to elevate us. Because, like the weights, we shock ourselves into growth, you
And
know?
we do.
And a lot of people don't really think about, what muscle growth is. It's destroying, well, not destroying the muscle, but you tear the muscle fibers.
Hear it.
You tear the
Hear it.
muscle fibers, and then when they grow
Oh,
back, they're stronger and they're bigger.
that's right.
And we have to free
And you're
ourselves to
sore while it's
experience that
doing that.
same type of tear.
Absolutely. And you're
Yes.
sore. You have the delayed
Yes.
onset muscle soreness for a day or
Mhm.
two. It's so uncomfortable.
Mhm. Mhm.
But in order for you to grow, you have to tear the muscle.
You have to tear the muscle. Yes. And so, well, of course, this is something that we could talk about all day, and I'm so grateful, that we've had this opportunity to chat. And I remember when we met, I guess 4 years ago now, right? Yeah, 4 years
Mhm.
ago, because this was
Oh,
during
yeah.
it was
COVID.
during the pandemic. So
It was,
yeah, it was during the
absolutely.
pandemic. Yeah, so that seems like it was 10 years ago, but it was only four. It was only four. But I remember, when we first met, and we were introduced by mutual friends, and at that time working on a creative project, which I've not completely abandoned. I still think there is opportunity for us to perhaps pick that up in a different way, but it was so great to get to know you, and I was just so inspired by your enthusiasm and just your willingness to do something new and to take risks. And even though that particular project didn't manifest in the way we set out, it definitely planted seeds that, I still believe have the opportunity to grow and become maybe something even bigger than what were working on then. But I do thank you for being willing to share your experiences and to share your story. And because, of course, we grow through our stories, and we connect through our experiences. So I know we've dropped, like, so many different gems during this talk, but if you could think of like one thing, what one big takeaway from our conversation, and this connection, what would that one thing be?
Um, I would probably say, well, we talked about the disruptions
Mhm. Mhm.
and really using those disruptions to our advantage
Mhm.
and understanding that disruptions are going to come through life, and those disruptions are opportunities for growth.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't be afraid to grow.
Right. Right. And my takeaway, I think, is very similar, and I think we're just stating it a little bit differently. But my biggest takeaway from our conversation today is that there's freedom in the ability to change. That's
Mm,
where you truly can find freedom, when you openly embrace change and not actively resist it, and actually
mm,
welcome it. And in welcoming it, become deliberate in shaping change, because we there's some changes that we cannot avoid, or we can't prevent, or some things are just natural in how, aging, but we can still have an influence on how we change, because everybody's going to get older, at least if we're blessed. We continue to get older, but we don't have to become old. you know, we
Right.
can we can embrace that change and age with grace and ease, and in a way that allows us to retain vitality. And with any disruption, we have that power. So that's my
Well,
biggest takeaway.
and I just want to thank you because as I was coming off of my disruption, when we first met, you were such a gift to me. Yeah, our whatever that creative outlet was that we were doing, I don't know what
That's
it
a whole
was.
nother story. We have to have.
A whole nother thing. But the synergies that you and I had, though your light helped me heal. And
Oh,
I am grateful. And I'm also really grateful that we reconnected.
yes, yes,
Um, so I look forward to staying connected and having more conversations about this
yes.
because as I'm sure with you, I get women reach out to me kind of at least once a month, maybe twice a month, and they want to know how I got through my disruption.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being able to kind of look back and kind of put things together, kind of like in the ways that you have them outlined here, kind of talking about what is freedom to you,
Mm-hmm.
talking about free prisons and the liberated life, like what does all that mean, is another way for me to kind of talk to my friends about
Mm-hmm.
this going forward. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's just not stay in neutral. Let's not even go in reverse. We need to kind of get it in first gear.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let's start putting one foot in front of the other.
Yes. And movement. Um, movement is power, because when
Movement
you
is
move,
power.
you gain momentum, and when you gain momentum, you're able to fuel your energy. And so many times when you are in a pretty prison, or a prison of any kind, it's important to just keep moving,
It
and
is.
eventually you'll break free.
Agree.
All right.
Agree.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this great conversation. I knew it was
Thank you,
going to
dear.
be great, and I also thank you for keeping it real, because
Thank you.
authenticity is so important, and I appreciate you sharing with me and with those who will be listening. So,
Anytime.
yes, yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for living your life in the and with me. I appreciate you greatly. So, thank you to all who have tuned in to this awesome episode. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that you felt something, but most of all, I hope that you do something. Thank you for joining for another installation of Conversations, Libations, and Revelations. Here's to keeping it real.
This episode was brought to you by the Successful and Fulfilled Woman New You Transformation, a VIP day for the high achieving woman who is ready to be successful and fulfilled. If you are a woman who feels burned out and uninspired, or you are a woman ready to start over after a divorce, death, or other disruption, or you are a mother whose children are ready to leave the nest or are already gone, and you are now ready to create a meaningful life for yourself, or you are a woman who's approaching your golden years and you want the next half to be the best half, or you are a woman who's ready to get more out of life and ready to stop marking time and start living life, then we need to have a revelation conversation. Go to www.everythingideserve.com to schedule your complimentary revelation conversation, where together we will talk about where you are now and where you want to be, and begin to develop a plan to get you where you desire to be. You will leave your revelation conversation understanding the first thing that you can start doing today to begin living a successful and fulfilled life. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Living Life in the And for the Successful and Fulfilled Woman. Please be sure to let me know what made you feel something, what you learned,
and what moved you to action. Please subscribe so you don't miss out on a great conversation. And don't forget to rate and review the podcast and let me know how you are living life in the end. Life is too long to be unfulfilled. Don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Tell someone else to listen for themselves. We should all be fulfilled. Remember, your life is the product of your choices. Choose to commit to bringing the desires of your heart to completion. You don't get what you deserve until you get what you decide. Life is too long to be unfulfilled.